with James Dorsey on Sabahul Muslim.
James, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Pleasure to be with you.
Now, the much touted meetings between Trump and Netanyahu, their third encounter this year, have failed to move the needle on a Gaza ceasefire, despite both men expressing optimism that an agreement was only days away.
Indeed, fundamentally, nothing has changed. Hamas wants guarantees that negotiations and a temporary ceasefire will lead to a permanent ceasefire. It wants guarantees with regard to the distribution of aid in Gaza and the withdrawal of Israeli troops. The only thing that has changed is essentially that what Netanyahu has said at the end of his visit to Washington is that he's willing to try and achieve his goals, which are the total destruction of Hamas politically and militarily through negotiations. But if that does not work, he will return to fighting. So fundamentally, those two meetings with President Trump this week, multiple meetings with people on the Hill in Congress, as well as senior U.S. officials like Steve Witkoff, the U.S. negotiator, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, have not moved the needle in any form or fashion.
So, as the ceasefire talks stall, right, Israel plans to corral Gazans in a sealed tent city in Rafah that many Palestinians believe is a prelude to their expulsion.
Indeed. So what we've seen parallel to basically stalled ceasefire negotiations is a curtailing of the flow of or the distribution of humanitarian aid, particularly food, by the controversial Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has now closed down 3 of its 4 distribution points in Gaza. And at the same time, we've seen the Israeli defense minister articulate a plan in which, at least initially, 600,000 Palestinians would be corralled in a tent camp on the ruins of the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Many Palestinians see that as a prelude to expulsion from the territory, particularly as we saw both Netanyahu and Trump this week again tout their plan to depopulate the Strip.
So the Arab Gulf states are stepping into the driver's seat of Syria's post-sanctions recovery, with the UAE hosting the Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara this week at the start of his second Gulf tour of 2025. So the visit marks a deepening regional effort to shape Syria's future.
Indeed. So the door has been opened to Gulf states in a big way, investing in Syria and helping Syria get through and stabilize Syria, in part through economic development and reconstruction. That door has been opened by President Trump's lifting of the sanctions against Syria. And so what you're seeing is countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar moving to seriously invest and aid Syria. That's part of a bid. That's not only an economic move, it's also a bid to shape the future of the Middle East and to be a major player in that. And Syria is, of course, an important country bordering on Israel, its former relations with Iran, Lebanon. So this is really a way for the Gulf states to carve out a serious role for themselves.
We move to Malaysia now. So unlike the other perceived Muslim Brotherhood supporters such as Qatar and Turkey, Malaysia has remained by and large in the shadows of the Middle East's information wars, despite the country's public support for Hamas. That may change if a recent report by the Philadelphia-based far-right pro-Israel Middle East forum is anything to go by. Tell us about that, James.
Indeed. So Hamas is allowed to openly operate in Malaysia. The Malaysians have made clear that despite what happened on October 7 with the Hamas attack on Israel in 2023, they will maintain their relations with Hamas, even though they have cracked down on one funding channel that Hamas has in Malaysia. The point here is that the Middle East Forum is not just a think tank. It has very close ties with U.S. officials in the Trump administration. It's been instrumental in identifying and targeting people who have then been detained by U.S. authorities and are slated for deportation, including the Georgetown postdoctoral fellow Badar Khan Suri. What this report does, it's focused on Georgetown University. It's a frontal attack on the university and the connections of various of its scholars, particularly at the Al Walid Center for Christian Muslim Understanding. The report is flawed. There are factual things that are incorrect, but what it signals is that pro-Israeli, anti-conservative U.S., anti-Qatar, anti-Turkish campaigners in the United States who do have fluence are now also wanting Malaysia to take center stage.
All right, James, as always, we thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Listeners can read James's articles, James M. Dorsey, on Substack. It's now coming up to 3 minutes before 8. Time for some commercials.